How's everybody doing today? Welcome into another episode of On the Wire with King of the Hill Sports. Today we are going to be going over all of the waiver wire needs you need headed into week number 4. Who's going to boom, who busted, and how did my teams look in week 3? Let's jump right into it. Week number 3 came and went. The Ravens won, we're on the board, and better yet, we went 3-0 in fantasy. Mostly in part to Deontay Johnson. Thank God Andy Dalton took over. It's criminal how bad Bryce Young has been after we can now see how good Andy Dalton was in this offense and how good everybody around him was able to look in this offense. In my Yahoo League, we broke 160 with Juwan Jennings on the bench. If, for any reason, I would have started Juwan Jennings over Zay Flowers, I would have put up 200 points in a half-point PPR league. Huge week. We're in first place there. We're 3-0 in one league. We're 2-1 in both of the others. We're 3-0 on the week. Things are looking bright. Now, honestly, the waiver wire is looking pretty rough this week. I don't really see anybody that stands out too much to me, but regardless, this is who's on the wire headed into week number 4. Now, we're going to start by taking a look at the quarterbacks. Sam Darnold, if he hasn't been added in your league yet, he's only owned in 16% of leagues somehow still. He's QB4 on the season. Week 1 he had 14.5. He's put up 20 and 23 cents. He put up 20 on San Fran and 23 on Houston, which Houston is on fraud alert, by the way. Big loss to the Vikings and 2 sus wins before that. But in spite of that, you have to add Sam Darnold. You could start Sam Darnold going forward, especially against Green Bay coming up. I could see it. And besides that, sounds a little scary. I know it sounds a little scary. Daniel Jones. Can we start Daniel Jones as a flyer quarterback in fantasy? I think so. The last 2 weeks. 18 against Washington. Washington's pass defense is horrendous. Okay. 19 against Cleveland. Cleveland has a good defense. Daniel Jones against Dallas. If he could replicate what he did against Cleveland in like the slightest, which he should be able to against a worse defense, that Dallas defense isn't looking great this year. I would say I'm not afraid to start Daniel Jones this week. Now, could it come back to bite you? It's Daniel Jones. Sure it can, but based on that recent performance, Daniel Jones is looking like a kind of start. Shout out Malik Neighbors. Let's move on to the running backs. Again, not much to see here. I did mention Miles Sanders last week, and I considered starting him myself, and I didn't. And I regret it, because he did put up 11 points. I still won my matchup, but I started Jaleel McLaughlin, who did score a touchdown, but he didn't have as many points as Miles Sanders. In week 2, he had 10 touches. In week 3, he had 9 touches, but he got a touchdown. 3 catches, 2 catches. Miles Sanders, okay, there's a lot of injuries right now. If you need an injury fill-in, I wouldn't be afraid to flex Miles Sanders potentially. Like, I almost started him as an RB2 last week, and he would have done better than the guy that I started anyway. So, especially with Andy Dalton in there now, turning that Carolina offense around, Miles Sanders could be a fringe potential flex RB2 in case you desperately need one due to injuries, which I did last week. And then Roschon Johnson, he's only owned in 0.8% of leagues right now, but DeAndre Swift has been bad. And Roschon Johnson, for that reason, had 8 carries last week and 4 catches, 12 touches for Roschon. DeAndre Swift has been horrific through 3 weeks. Roschon, through 12 touches, looked a lot better than DeAndre Swift has looked all season long, basically. Roschon Johnson will probably be able to start eating more and more into DeAndre Swift's workload in that backfield, assuming DeAndre Swift continues to play like ass. Let's keep it moving. Here we are at wide receivers. Now, Jonathan Mingo, I could see being an ad this week, only owned in 0.5% of leagues. He's strictly an ad if Adam Thielen can't play. I mean, 3 catches for 18 yards, nothing too crazy, but he did have the second most snaps at wide receiver last week for Carolina, behind Deontay Johnson, because Adam Thielen got injured. Mario Douglas had an 86% snap share this week. That's up from his previous high in the first 2 weeks of 60% only. He should be the wide receiver 1 there. He has the talent to be the wide receiver 1. We saw it last year. And it's finally showing now. 9 targets, 7 catches for 70 yards yet again. I mean, I'd add him. I think moving forward, he should hopefully lead that team in targets and snaps every week. Let's do a quick mention to Allen Lazard. Add Allen Lazard. If you're desperate, start him. I mean, he has 3 touchdowns already. He has the 4th most red zone targets among all wide receivers in the NFL through 3 weeks. He's touchdown dependent, but he has that connection with Aaron Rodgers, which we haven't quite seen from Garrett Wilson yet. Garrett Wilson is getting double covered an awful lot, leaving Allen Lazard wide open in the end zone for a potential cheap touchdown for your team. Now, Lil Jordan Humphrey is interesting, owned in 0.0% of ESPN leagues. Now, Lil Jordan Humphrey, 9 points, 9.7 points. He broke 9 points 2 weeks in a row. But being on the Broncos, it's pretty good. I mean, 8 targets last week, 5 targets the week before that. The last couple of weeks, Lil Jordan Humphrey has kind of started to stand out, especially, compared to Josh Reynolds, who had his most down week so far this year with only 2 targets. Lil Jordan Humphrey, a little bit of a takeover. They're playing the Jets this week, though, so I probably wouldn't start them. And for the 2nd week in a row, he's way down the list, but Jalen Nailor. As long as Jordan Addison is out, you should play him. I mean, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. He scored a touchdown 3 weeks in a row. I mean, of course, he only has 7 catches through those 3 weeks. But they're looking for him in the red zone. They're looking for him in the end zone. And especially if Jordan Addison can't play, he's still going to be the number 2 wide receiver behind Justin Jefferson on a weekly basis. Add Jalen Nailor, especially if Jordan Addison continues to sit out. And one final mention here, I added him last week when I mentioned him. I think he's only owned in 2% of leagues still, but Tutu Atwell was the number 1 wide receiver for the Rams last week against the 49ers. He put up a pretty nice game. I think he had 4 catches for 90-something yards. Tutu Atwell, the Deebo Samuel of the Rams. Looking pretty good. He could do it all. Yet again, I suggest picking up Tutu Atwell while Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp are injured. And finally, tight ends. It's the tight end carousel. It's back. You can't trust any tight ends. Or can you? All of the tight ends are super inconsistent. Let's actually take a look at all tight ends last week. Because I just want to make a point here how, let's take a look here. Nick Vanette and Josh Wiley, not even Chigo Okonkwo, Nick Vanette and Josh Wiley of the Titans were in the top 12 last week among tight ends. The tight end position is a miss. Cole Kmet, tight end 2 last week, 26 fantasy points in full point PPR last week for Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet, after last week, is now tight end 3 on the season. Before that, he had 6.7 and 1.4 points. 1 good week, and he's tight end 3. That being said, add Cole Kmet if he's not added. He's added in my league. He probably should be added in your league. Another guy to add, Tyler Conklin. He's just out on the field a lot. He's played over 90% of the snaps every week. He's been on the field for 92% of the snaps over the entire season so far, I'm pretty sure. He had 1.6, 2.0, and this past week, 14, 5 catches for 93. Here's the thing, if somebody's on the field that much, 92% of the snaps over X amount of weeks, he's going to eventually start catching footballs. If you're on the field that often, you're running routes, even if he's blocking sometimes. If he's on the field for the entire game on offense, some balls are going to go his way. Last week they did. First couple weeks they didn't. He's going to be boomer bust. That Jets offense, receiving-wise, is still kind of up in the air. It's really been spread around by Aaron Rodgers a lot. Pick up Conklin. You could add any one of these guys, and next week, he might not do anything. Next week, we could point out next week, Cade Otton's going to put up 20. Just you wait. No, that's not going to happen. But Cade Otton also is a guy who's been playing 90% of the snaps and had 7 catches this week for Tampa Bay, so. And even with that, he's tight end 35. Tight end's a mess this year. trust who you trust. We could suggest somebody new every week, and none of them will really do anything. Or will they? Add Josh Wiley and Nick Vanette, their top 12 tight ends last week. I don't know. And I want to end this again today by suggesting you pick up Tyler Huntley on the Miami Dolphins. Skylar Thompson looks like he should be in the Canadian Football League, Arena Football League, UFL, whatever XFL turned into. Tim Boyle also, he's 0% rostered. He should remain 0% rostered. The Miami Dolphins are in desperate need of any help possible. And Tyler Huntley was a Pro Bowler just 2 years ago. Add Tyler Huntley. He needs to start for the Miami Dolphins. If he's not starting this week, he has to be starting next week. Or if Tyler Huntley's not starting this week, he needs to be starting next week. He's the best thing they have until Tua is back, which who knows how long that will be. We'll leave off on my team here. Hopefully Joe Mixon is back this week. That's who's on the wire headed into week 4. There's not too much going on this week, honestly. I'm probably not adding anybody. I have Dare Ogunbowale on the end of my bench. I might hold on to him just in case Joe Mixon can't play again. And, I mean, he's behind Cam Akers, but regardless. I need running back help until Jonathan Brooks comes back. I'm Matt Mods. This is King of the Hill Sports. That's who's on the wire in week 3, and we are on the way into week 4. Thanks for tuning in. Signing out.